Hello and welcome to the SaaSOps show, where we talk about SaaS management and all things IT. For today's show, we wanted to do something a little bit different and reflect on the crazy last year that we've had. Today, my awesome co-host Brian and I are joined by a super special guest, BetterCloud's very own CEO and founder, David Politis.
Hello.
Woo. Good morning, whichever way you are. I'm not really sure. But anyway, welcome, David. In your own words, could you tell us and the audience a little something about yourself and like what even is BetterCloud?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I remember when we first talked about this show months ago, and it's awesome to see what this has become. So thank you for having me. Finally, I've been trying to get on the show for a while. So
we had a very long
for everyone. So my name is David Politis. I'm the founder and CEO of BetterCloud. And, you know, I've spent my whole career in cloud and SaaS, really even before there was even terms for cloud and SaaS. And, you know, I started BetterCloud with the idea that SaaS is going to be the way that people work. And I saw this early in the days of G Suite, you know, and Gmail, Calendar, Drive, the really early days, 2010, 2011, and felt like this is just going to proliferate. And there was going to be this sprawl and that there was going to be a need for IT, something to help them get control, get their arms around all these SaaS applications that they're using. And as you know, I'm a huge proponent. I think SaaS really has changed how we work. I think it's awesome. I think it can do amazing things when implemented correctly at a company. And so it's really about how do we enable IT to do that? How do we empower IT to do that? And really the product has evolved a lot. 9 years now. We've been doing this 9 years. It's evolved into this real SaaS management platform. We have discover capabilities, management, security. So it's been an awesome run, and really, as you know, and I think as a lot of the viewers know, I mean, I do this also just for the passion for IT. You know, I love working with IT professionals. I love seeing how the IT profession has changed over these years. So again, thank you for having me on the show today.
Thank you for joining us. And it's I sometimes say that tech companies, years in tech companies are kind of like dog years. It's like 9 years in a tech company is like like a whole lifespan, really. You can go through like multiple products.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. 9 years, I think is we have been through two major real evolutions of this platform. And it's been, and the market, I mean, the speed that the market moves, it's crazy. When we started BetterCloud, there was no Slack, there was no Zoom. I mean, it's just crazy there was no Office 365. You just think like that's 9 years ago, and just think of where we are today. Just almost unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really crazy to think about these tools that we feel like we can't work without now just didn't exist like a mere 9 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, think about what would have happened, right? With if COVID had happened 9 years ago, 10 years ago, the world would not have been able to operate. I mean, I don't know if the world as a whole could have moved and continue to stay open for business the way that it has.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about the video conferencing options that were available to us 9 years ago, I agree.
That would have been something. And also just like the amount of things that I can look at on my phone at any given moment. Like all docs, I can comment on docs, I can edit spreadsheets, I can communicate with people on Slack, I could use Salesforce if I knew anything about how to use Salesforce. You know, like you really couldn't have even done most of that 9 years ago.
That's true.
If you were to reflect on this past 2020, what were your like expectations going into the pandemic, and how has actually going through it changed your perspective? Did you kind of have a feeling of what to expect? Was it like totally different?
I'd say the biggest thing for me, and I think for everyone, when we entered this in March, right? It was almost, I mean, it was a year ago that we shut down the offices, that school, it was exactly a year ago. I thought that it was going to last a long time, frankly. And I remember speaking to my parents and them saying it's going to be June, maybe July. And I think we all remember the day Google said we're closing our offices until the summer. And we said we're closing our offices until the summer, but we felt like that was going to be till summertime. I thought it was going to take until the end of the year, the end of 2020. I don't know that anyone expected we'd be here, at least not in March. I don't think anyone expected we'd be a year later and still be dealing with this. And so that for me was the number one expectation, which I had a different expectation of the time. I think everyone else did. And the other one for me, as it related to the company, was I had an expectation that we were going to have a hard time being productive as a remote company. I love having everyone in the office. That was a big thing for me, the in-office culture and seeing people and being able to just sit down and have lunch with people and like that. These were things that I loved, the all hands meetings we would do in person. And I did not know if we as a company would be productive. And I remember, I think it was like the second week of April, looking back at the last month of being at home and saying, wow, we were more productive than we were in the office. And I remember getting feedback from a lot of people saying, I like working this way. And that for me, I was really worried about that. I know, I think most people weren't worried about it on the team, but I was really worried about that going into this.
Well, sure. I mean, ultimately it's, everybody individually thinks, I can do this. This is no problem, but getting everybody and everybody's, not everybody works the same way. So some people have an easier time with it than others. Some people have a much harder time working, both just like in a home environment where there's environmental distractions and like, your kids and your dogs and your, the lawnmower going outside and all this stuff, to just like the isolation of feeling physically like you're not connected with people. It is really kind of like remarkable how quickly, like not just us, but like all of these companies have switched.
And the companies and the students and the schools. I mean, my children they're 5 and 7, and they went from being in a school every day to being remote overnight. And yes, they did not enjoy it, but they learned. I mean, they continued to learn, which is just mind blowing. I mean, they're little children using technology to learn, and the stuff that the teachers started doing with all Google Classroom and presentation, it was awesome. I mean, it not the way I want my children learning long term, but it's just, it really is. Like we said, 9 years ago, if this had happened, I'm not sure how schools would have maintained the education. I'm not sure they could have done that 9 years ago.
Yeah, it's really crazy to think that everything just changed overnight. I remember hoping that it would only take 2 weeks to get back to the office, or a month, but kind of feeling this thing in the pit of my belly that it might be a little bit longer.
I think I was one of the people being like, oh, this will be fine in like a couple of months. And like, even now I'm like, it'll be fine in a couple of months. Ooh, if I was as wrong about the next few months as I was about the last year.
Oof. Yeah, let's hope that's not the case. It does seem like lots of places are getting many, many more doses of vaccines. Many people are getting vaccinated every day. So I'm trying to feel hopeful about the next couple of months. David, what is something that March 2021 you wish you could have told March 22 you?
The price of Bitcoin. No, I'm just kidding. No,
Buy GameStop.
Yeah, exactly. Bitcoin and GameStop. No, honestly, I mean, really, I think just knowing if I'm being really honest, I think knowing that things were going to be okay. I really, in March, I was pretty nervous. I mean, I was nervous for like humanity. I was nervous I had watched a movie which I should not have watched in January, Contagion. And that movie, do not watch them. I mean, now it's okay, but that I should not have watched that in January. I mean, when March came, my wife and I both I thought that was going to happen. And it was, and I think to know that it would take a long time. If I could tell myself, hey, this is how long it's going to take, but things are going to be, that the world's not ending, and and we're going to continue to operate in this way, and my children are going to be okay. And like, those are the things that I wish I knew, because really that moment, I think for all of us, that those early days, and for me, it was also about the team. I mean, there was a lot of it, as you know, because you two were very front and center in helping us make sure the team was okay. And for me, it's the 300 people that then you're worried about them and then their families. It's just this cascading fear, frankly, of all those things. And so that, knowing how things would have played out, that's really the thing I wish I knew a year ago, or wish I told myself, a year ago.
It's all going to be okay, and buy some Bitcoin.
Yeah. A lot of Bitcoin.
There's gonna be this thing where a Reddit thread tries to take down a hedge fund by buying GameStop. Some stuff is truly unbelievable.
Yes.
What shifts have you seen in the SaaS management space during this last year? How do you foresee this continuing to advance and shape work as we know it? I mean, for me, it kind of feels like, and I believe you said it kind of feels like we've been pushed off a cliff. Is there any going back?
There's definitely no going back. I mean, at this point, the longer this has lasted, I think in the beginning, I talked to CIOs who were setting up essentially temporary setups, if you will, temporary infrastructure to handle remote work, and it was temporary in their minds. And I think what's happened is, as each week goes by, month, year, you're now at a point where all the employees, everyone's used to working this way. It's not going to go back. As we know, we're not going to go back to the office in some full-time way. We're not going to think about your roles. I mean, your roles have become focused on the technologies. You were already focused on those technologies, but I mean, how many office build-outs were you involved in? How much of the AV and the physical, that stuff that you're not involved in any of that. And it's all about empowering and enabling the interactions that that employees are having over these SaaS applications. I mean, it's as simple as that. I think, as obviously you both know, like, I talk so much about DevOps and SaaSOps being very synonymous and being very similar. And forever, people say, well, every company is a technology company, and every company needs DevOps because they're all in some way, shape, or form, building technology, and they're powered by technology. That's true. An even more true statement today is every employee at every company in the world is using SaaS applications, and IT is responsible for those. You can't, that is as true as it's ever been. And so I think from a SaaS management perspective, just the mindset and the importance of it, it's just, it's become very strategic. I think it's become something where employees feel it more. They understand how this is making their day-to-day better. They experience it on every minute, because you can't do anything unless you're using the technology that's being provided by IT. It's really the time, the fact that it's taken this long. I think that's the thing that's thrown us off that cliff, and we can't come back. I mean, I don't see how, what are we going to do? Start putting servers? I don't think anyone would take the risk to put a server somewhere again, because what if something happens? You won't have access to those physical locations. You won't, I just don't think anyone was going to take that mindset anymore. So this is a big change.
I felt very fortunate that we were in a position where we were when this started happening, that we kind of, even though we were such an in-office culture and like being around other people was such a core part of that, the way that we worked, or the tools at least that we used to work, we didn't really have to change much to be able to pivot to work remotely. Like, we were already using all the cloud productivity tools. Like, we use Slack, we use G Suite or Google Workspace, we use Zoom, all those things. So it was really like more about reconditioning the mindset and the mentality of like doing that when you're not surrounded by people. But I find like the problems that we deal with now are not, like how to set up conference rooms, but like, how do we make people's lives just easier in this? Like, how do we now it's like all of the problem space that we have is like trying to reduce this friction, just like 5% or like 10% along the way, because people just like, they're trying to do their jobs and exist with this like mental overhead of like mental and emotional overhead of what's happening in the world.
And when you talk about that friction, you change it by 2%. You're now changing it 2% across an entire company. The impact is massive. I mean, that is, you expand that. That's and I think we've seen it here. I think you've continued to make these improvements, and they're incremental improvements. But when you add them all up, just the seamlessness, the frictionless work. I mean, it's a more, you can be more productive as a worker when that's the environment that you have. I mean, that's simplest way to put it. When even the simple things of someone joining a company, we talk about obviously all the time, someone joining a company and just having access to all the systems they need when they need it, when they arrive, not having to ask anyone, knowing where to, I mean, that's a big thing, especially when you're not in an office and you can just swivel your chair and say, hey, how do I do blah, 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 blah. It's there for you. So but those things add up in a huge, huge way. And especially we start extrapolating companies that have 10,000, 50,000 employees. I mean, the impact that can have is just massive.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something that we'll continue to see is, people are moving to different areas now. They're working in completely different time zones. Like Brian now is on the West Coast, and we've had to adjust some of our meetings to make it so that he's not waking up at like 5 a.m. joining our stand-up, right? But like, I think Brian and I, as IT practitioners, will focus a lot of our time on figuring out how do we help people replicate the ability to collaborate together the same way that they might have in person, in a way that is remote, but not, not like taking away people's time, because everyone has different schedules now. How do we make things more asynchronous, I guess is what I'm saying.
That's going to be really, I mean, like you said, we've seen that, right? We went from having people in 3 locations, 3 cities, to having, I think now 16, 17 cities. And just exactly that, and across many more time zones. And it's exactly that. The asynchronous is going to be really solving that problem. That is going to be a really interesting, I think for everyone, that's going to be a long-term, that's going to be a really interesting challenge.
Yeah. I mean, and James, I mean, like, it feels like we're focusing on like the fundamentals so much more. It's like training is important, like much more so than we, maybe even the focus that we placed on it before, where we just assumed because somebody was right next to you, like if they have a problem, they can just ask me how this works. So they can see from their coworkers, like what it is that they're doing. They just see and kind of do that themselves. And I feel it seems like we've placed a lot more of an emphasis on making sure that everybody that comes in, especially as we get more diverse, as we hire people from different areas, as we hire people from different companies with different backgrounds and different experiences, that we are all actually on the same page.
I mean, the training you did on even Zoom and telling people how they should set up their Zoom area and the lighting and even that, I mean, it seems simple. But when you're talking to customers all day, or you're talking to partners, or having a good Zoom setup, I mean, it seems so simple. When you do that across the whole company, we as a company come across more professionally. You can hear us better. I mean, I remember I was talking on some conversation, someone's like, Dave, you should stop using AirPods for your mics, get a mic, and I did that. And now it does make a difference. I sound better. I sound clear. It's easier on the other side to listen to me. It's easier on internal meetings. Like, there are things like that, to your point. It's fundamentals and it's training, but it's stuff that people probably wouldn't spend the energy setting up a Zoom area for themselves, because if I took a couple calls from home, who really cared? But now it's about, I need to make sure that these things I need to be more effective with Slack. I as everyone knows, I'm not a really big user of Slack, and I have to be a better user of Slack. I need to learn the fundamental, like the tricks, and it matters. It gives me back 10 minutes, 20, 15 minutes a day. These things, they all add up, and that's all around SaaS management. It's all around SaaSOps. It's all in IT's hands, which is, you think about that is a really sitting at a very critical juncture for pretty much every company in the world now.
Gartner just released a new market guide specific to SaaS management platforms, as I'm sure you're very well aware of. How do you feel like this aligns with BetterCloud and BetterCloud's future? Is there anything that really surprised you, or what surprised you the most, maybe?
We've been talking to Gartner and Forrester and all the analysts for a long time. And I think for me, I wouldn't say surprised, but I'm just really happy that they came out with a report for this category. I mean, number one, that for me was just, it's, again, this journey over 9 years, it's a long journey, and it's a lot of convincing people these problems exist. There's going to be a need for a solution. And when the largest analyst firm, the most respected analyst firm in the world, comes out and says, yes, that is true, that's a big deal. And for me, I think the thing that I was also excited about was they are talking about the problems in very similar ways to the way we talk about them. They talk about discover, manage, secure, and that these are the things that people need in their environment. And I think that for me, that's it's a lot of validation, and it's just and when you talk to them, or again, any of the other analyst firms, they all say this was not really on the top of their list 2 years ago. And to the question Brian asked before, because of the time this has lasted and because of the realization that this is just how work is going to get done, it moved to the top of their list very quickly, because they started getting a lot more clients calling and asking about it. How do I handle all these SaaS applications? I mean, I've been saying for a long time, the supply and demand curve for people who are experts in SaaSOps, it's broke. Right now, there is more demand than there is supply. How many people? You've both been doing this for a long time. I mean, you were both customers of BetterCloud years ago. I've known both of you for a long time. You've seen this. And you know the other SaaSOps professionals. You all know. There's a community. The supply is not great. There's not that many people. And the demand now, it doesn't matter. The banks and the insurance companies and these people they have no one on their teams that have any expertise. They are all in need of people who are experts in this, because it's not a nice to have anymore. It's a must have. And that to me is I'm really curious to see how the human capital piece of this plays out, because you need the expertise. And that part I haven't yet fully gotten my head around or seen yet because there really is not enough supply, frankly, is what I believe at this point.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Do more with less. It's like the age-old story. Were you when this is all happening, when the report came out, were you sitting back like, well, come crawling back to us?
Well. How the turntables.
I wouldn't say that, but I would say that I got chills when I read that report, and I said, wow, this is really and they just did a really good job, I think, of synthesizing everything that's happening. They did of course that's their job, but they did a really good job of boiling it down in a way that I think anyone who's going to read that is going to get it and understand it very quickly. And so, yeah, I was really, I mean, it was amazing to see that, really. And I think that's the beginning. I think that's just the beginning. You've all seen it, right? That's the analyst firms. But when you see the community and you see people whose careers have started to get built around SaaSOps, that feels even better. I mean, I love when we see people who are moving up, who are moving into new roles and getting bigger roles and creating teams, and it's all around this. Honestly, nothing better. That for me is like, and especially because many of those people I've seen from 9 years ago in our shitty office with cockroaches, like that we had, we'd have meetups in that, like, we were huddled around like a little monitor, and I'll never forget those days. And a lot of those people have continue to go on to do amazing things. And so that for me is the most, I love that. And again, you see it firsthand yourselves, and So it's awesome.
Yeah, and if you are someone watching this video right now and you are SaaS curious, we would encourage you to join us at the SaaSOps community. We'll put a link in here, but it's SaaSOps.community.
And
like
if
that.
you're already in the community and you're a SaaS practitioner and you'd like to prove your skills and throw LinkedIn badges in people's face, you can also get certified as a BetterCloud certified administrator, which you should do also. And we'll put a link to that there, somewhere here.
Somewhere,
There.
Great. Well, thank you so much, David. We really appreciate you taking time out of your super busy schedule to talk to us. We love BetterCloud. We love talking to you. This has been an amazing conversation, and we're just chuffed.
Chuffed.
Thank you.
That's like a word of the week from me.
I love it. I love this show, as you know, so I'm excited to be here. And yeah, I hope I can come back one day. I'll get back on the waiting list for another year from today. So thank you.
All right. And then the last thing that I want to plug is we are hiring at BetterCloud, and Brian and I are actually hiring for our team. We're looking for an associate IT support specialist. So please check out our jobs page and give it a whirl.
Yes, please. When we're talking about shortages of IT people, come to us. Come to us first.
And we've got good swag. I wore the most limited edition.
Well, thank you so much. Right. And we will see you next time on the SaaSOps show.
Yeah, we make dumb jokes. So
yeah, I know.
If you like dumb jokes.
Yeah.